You know what the problem with being the most advanced civilization in 7 galaxies is? You start believing your own propaganda. And that, my unfortunate friends, is exactly what happened to us. My name is Vorruk Tal-Merin, and I used to be the senior military advisor to His Eternal Radiance, Emperor Zyloth the Magnificent. Notice I said, used to be. There's a reason for that, and it involves a human, a really stupid bet, and what I can only describe as the most catastrophic series of events in our entire imperial history. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me set the stage properly. The Kryn Empire had ruled the Andromeda sector for approximately 9,000 years. 9,000 years. We had conquered 473 species, integrated them into our glorious hierarchy, and established a peace so perfect that wars became nothing more than entertaining historical fiction. Our technology was unmatched. Our military was unstoppable. Our emperor was, well, magnificent. Zyloth wasn't just any ruler. He was bred for perfection over 6 generations. His scales shimmered with a purple-gold iridescence that could hypnotize lesser beings. His 4 arms could sign executive orders, hold ceremonial weapons, wave at crowds, and scratch his back simultaneously. His strategic mind had been enhanced with neural implants that gave him access to 17 different tactical databases. He was, without exaggeration, the pinnacle of leadership. And then humanity submitted their application for membership in the Galactic Council. Oh, we laughed. By the ancestors did we laugh. Humans were these bizarre bipedal creatures from a little planet they called Earth, all tucked away in some forgettable spiral arm of the Milky Way. They'd only achieved faster-than-light travel about 60 years prior. 60 years? We'd had warp drives for longer than their entire recorded history. They showed up in ships that looked like they'd been assembled by drunk mechanics using spare parts and hope. Their weapons were laughably primitive. Their diplomatic corps wore uncomfortable-looking fabric coverings instead of proper ceremonial armor. But the Council had rules. Every spacefaring species that applied got a hearing, so we granted them one. The human delegation arrived at the Grand Citadel on Kryn Prime 3 months before everything went sideways. There were 5 of them, led by an ambassador named Marcus Webb. He was completely unremarkable. Average height for a human, which made him short by our standards. Brown hair that seemed intentionally disordered. Eyes that crinkled at the corners like he found everything slightly amusing. He wore a dark suit that humans apparently considered formal, though it looked like glorified sleeping attire to me. "Greetings, honored members of the Galactic Council," Webb said in surprisingly fluent Galactic Standard. "Earth requests admission as a full member with all rights and responsibilities therein." Emperor Zyloth leaned forward on his throne, his expression one of benevolent curiosity mixed with barely concealed condescension. "Ambassador Webb, we have reviewed your application. Your species shows promise, certainly. Derek, we have reviewed your application. Your species shows promise, certainly, but you must understand that Council membership requires certain qualifications. Military strength, economic stability, cultural advancement, technological sophistication. We understand completely, Your Radiance," Webb replied with a small smile. "Tell me, Ambassador, what makes humanity believe they are ready to stand beside civilizations that have traversed the stars for millennia?" Webb's smile widened just slightly. "Because we're still here, Your Radiance. Despite everything that should have killed us, we're still here." That got a few chuckles from the assembled counselors. The Vren representative, a floating gas cloud named Whisper Through Storms, made a sound like wind through hollow tubes. Laughter. "Resilience is admirable," Zyloth conceded, "but insufficient. Perhaps a demonstration is in order." "Ambassador, are you familiar with the trials of ascendancy?" I saw something flicker in Webb's eyes then. Something calculating. "I've read about them, yes." The trials were an ancient tradition. Any species seeking council membership could bypass the standard evaluation process by having their champion compete in 3 challenges against a champion of the Empire. Combat, strategy, and endurance. In 9,000 years, exactly 0 challengers had won. Most didn't survive. "Would humanity care to participate in the trials?" Zyloth asked, his tone making it clear he expected a polite decline. Webb glanced back at his delegation. A woman with close-cropped red hair gave him an almost imperceptible nod. He turned back to the Emperor. "We would be honored, Your Radiance." The throne room fell absolutely silent. "You understand what you're agreeing to," Zyloth said slowly. "Your champion will face mine. The challenges are not symbolic. They are very real and very dangerous." We understand perfectly, Webb confirmed. When do we begin? 3 weeks later, the arena on Kryn Prime's primary moon was packed with spectators from across 7 galaxies. The trials hadn't been conducted in over 400 years. This was the entertainment event of the millennium. I stood in the Emperor's observation box, watching the crowds filter into seats that stretched up toward the atmospheric dome. Millions of beings, all gathered to watch humanity get humiliated. The betting pools had humanity's chances at approximately 9,000 to 1 against. I'd personally wagered a substantial sum on the Empire's champion. Have you seen their champion yet? Asked General Kriegsvan, our military commander. Her carapace clicked as she shifted her weight. Not yet, I admitted. Intelligence reports suggest they're keeping them isolated until the opening ceremony. Smart. Psychological warfare. Make us wonder what they've got hidden. Kriegsvan's mandibles twitched in amusement, though I can't imagine anything they could bring that would pose a real threat to Vorruk Tal-Merin, the Emperor's personal bodyguard and champion. He stood 3 meters tall, weighed approximately 200 kilograms of pure muscle, and had been genetically engineered for combat before birth. His reflexes were so fast he could catch plasma bolts with his bare hands. He'd won 47 gladiatorial tournaments without receiving a single wound. He was, quite literally, perfect. The ceremony began with traditional Kryn war drums that made your internal organs vibrate. Zyloth appeared on the central platform in full imperial regalia, looking absolutely majestic as lights played across his scales. The crowd erupted in cheers that took 5 full minutes to die down. Citizens of the Empire and honored guests, Zyloth's voice boomed through amplifiers. Today we witness the ancient trials of ascendancy. Humanity has chosen to prove their worth through combat strategy and endurance. Let them not say we are ungracious hosts. More cheers. Someone near the back started chanting, Kryn, Kryn, and it spread through the stadium like wildfire. I present to you our champion. Zyloth continued. Vorruk Tal-Merin, guardian of the throne, undefeated in war, the Emperor's blade. Vorruk emerged from the eastern tunnel. The crowd's roar became deafening. He raised his forearms in acknowledgement, plasma spears gripped in 2 hands, ceremonial blades in the others. His armor caught the light, creating a dazzling display. And now, Zyloth said, let us welcome humanity's champion. The western tunnel opened. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a figure walked out, and the crowd's noise dropped to confused murmuring. It was a woman, human. She couldn't have been more than 170 centimeters tall. She wore simple combat fatigues in muted gray and black. No armor, no ceremonial decorations. Her hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail. She carried no visible weapons. She walked to the center of the arena like she was heading to a casual appointment, not a potentially lethal trial. That's their champion? Kriegsvan said in disbelief. She looks like she should be organizing supply requisitions, not fighting Vorruk. The woman stopped at the designated position and looked up at the Emperor's box. She didn't bow, didn't salute, just gave a small nod like acknowledging a neighbor. State your name for the records, Zyloth commanded, sounding slightly uncertain for the first time. Captain Elena Vasquez, the woman replied, her voice carrying clearly through the arena's acoustics. Earth Defense Force, Special Operations Division. Captain Vasquez, Zyloth said carefully. You understand the nature of these trials? They are not training exercises, they are tests of absolute capability. I understand, Your Radiance. Very well. The first trial is combat. You will face Vorruk in direct engagement. You may use any weapons or tactics you deem appropriate. The trial ends when one combatant yields, is incapacitated, or is killed. Do you accept these terms? I do. Zyloth looked genuinely troubled now. I suspected he was wondering if this was some kind of elaborate suicide ritual. Then let the trial begin. Vorruk moved into a combat stance, all 4 arms spread, weapons ready. He probably outweighed Vasquez by 150 kilograms. The physics alone made this absurd. Vasquez rolled her shoulders, loosening up. She didn't adopt any recognizable fighting stance, just stood there, looking almost bored. Whenever you're ready, she called out to Vorruk. That was a mistake. You don't taunt Vorruk. He exploded forward with terrifying speed, plasma spears thrust ahead. The crowd gasped. Vasquez waited until he was approximately 3 meters away, then moved. I've seen a lot of combat in my life. Hundreds of battles, thousands of fights. I'd never seen anything move the way Vasquez moved. She didn't dodge. Exactly. It was more like she ceased being where the attacks were, and suddenly existed somewhere else. Vorthak's spears passed through empty air. His blades cut nothing but atmosphere. Vasquez flowed around him like water, her movements economical and precise. Then she struck. Her hand lashed out, palm flat, and hit Vorhath in the joint where his upper right arm connected to his torso. There was a crack like breaking wood. Vorhath's arm went limp, the plasma spear clattering to the ground. The crowd's noise changed from cheering to shocked confusion. Vorthak spun, using his remaining 3 arms to launch a coordinated attack. Vasquez ducked under one blade, deflected another with her forearm, and somehow turned Vorthak's own momentum against him. 3 seconds later, Vorthak was on his back, Vasquez's foot on his chest, looking up at her with what I can only describe as complete bewilderment. "Yield," Vasquez said quietly. "At the Hind yield," Vorth managed. The arena fell silent, completely, utterly silent. You could have heard a scale drop. The Grauman Skev stepped back and offered Vorth a hand up. He stared at it for a moment before accepting. She pulled him to his feet with surprising strength. The Zyloth stood in his observation box, all 4 arms gripping the railing. His scales had gone pale, cycling through colors rapidly, a sign of extreme agitation. "The first trial goes to humanity," he announced, his voice hollow with shock. The stadium exploded into chaos. Not cheering, not booing, just pure, confused noise as thousands of beings tried to process what they'd just witnessed. I felt my stomach sink as I watched Vasquez walk calmly back toward her tunnel, while the betting pools would be in absolute turmoil. Humanity's odds would shift dramatically. But more importantly, I realized something that made my scales itch with unease. We just revealed that we knew absolutely nothing about humans, and we had 2 more trials to go. Crixvan turned to me, her compound eyes wide. "What in the names of all the ancestors was that?" "I have no idea," I admitted, "but I think we need to reconsider our assessment of humanity." "You think?" she said sarcastically. Down in the arena, Vorth was being helped away by medical staff. His ego was probably more damaged than his body, but the look on his face suggested he was reconsidering every life choice that led to this moment. Ambassador Webb appeared on the diplomatic observation platform, that same slight smile on his face. He caught my eye and gave me a small wave. That's when I knew we were in serious trouble. Because Marcus Webb didn't look surprised by the outcome. He looked like everything was going exactly according to plan. And plans, in my experience, are only satisfying for the person who made them. The rest of us just get to deal with the consequences. The story will continue in part 2, where we'll witness the remaining 2 trials and discover just how a human managed to steal an emperor's throne. But that's a tale for the next installment. And trust me, you haven't seen anything yet. The next 48 hours were, to put it mildly, absolute pandemonium. Every major news network across 7 galaxies was running non-stop coverage of Captain Vasquez's victory. Military analysts were pulling apart the combat footage frame by frame, trying to understand what had happened. Physicists were arguing about whether humans had somehow developed personal gravity manipulation. Conspiracy theorists were claiming Vorth had been drugged or that the whole thing was staged. I knew better. I'd seen the look in Vorthak's eyes when Vasquez had him on the ground. That was the look of someone who'd just discovered their entire worldview was wrong. Emperor Zyloth called an emergency strategy session in his private chambers. Present were myself, General Crixvan, High Chancellor Mervik, and Vorth himself, who looked like he'd aged 50 years overnight despite the medical treatments. "Explain," Zyloth said flatly, his scales still flickering with agitated colors. "How did this happen?" Vorth's 4 arms hung limply at his sides. "Your Radiance, I have no explanation. She moved unlike anything I've encountered. Every attack I made, she'd already anticipated. It was like fighting smoke." "She's human," Crixvan said, mandibles clicking rapidly. "A species that achieved space travel 60 years ago. They shouldn't have combat techniques we've never seen. Unless," High Chancellor Mervik said slowly, his 3 eyes blinking in sequence, "they've been fighting each other for far longer than they've been traveling between stars." That thought settled over the room like a cold blanket. "Research their military history," Zyloth ordered. "Immediately. I want to know everything about human combat doctrine before the second trial begins tomorrow." I volunteered to lead that research. What I found kept me awake for the entire night. The humans, it turned out, had been at war with themselves almost continuously for their entire recorded history. They'd developed thousands of different fighting systems. They'd created weapons, specifically designed to kill other humans with maximum efficiency. They'd fought wars so devastating they'd nearly wiped themselves out multiple times, and they just kept going. While we'd been enjoying 9,000 years of peace, humans had spent that same period perfecting the art of violence. Captain Elena Vasquez, specifically, had trained in something called Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Krav Maga, and about 6 other martial arts systems I'd never heard of. She'd served in 3 separate human conflicts before being selected for their space program. She had more actual combat experience than most of our career soldiers had simulated training. The second trial was strategy. This, at least, we felt confident about. Combat was one thing, but strategy required intelligence, planning, and the ability to think in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Humans couldn't possibly match us there. The trial took place in the Grand Simulation Chamber, a massive room filled with holographic projectors. Both champions would command virtual fleets in a simulated battle. The first to achieve total victory or forced surrender would win. Our champion was Admiral Vorruk Hess, widely considered the finest tactical mind in the Empire. He'd won every wargame he'd ever participated in. His strategies were studied in military academies across 100 worlds. He had cybernetic implants that let him process tactical data from 17 sources simultaneously. Captain Vasquez showed up wearing the same simple fatigues, carrying a paper notebook and a pen. A paper notebook and a pen. Is she serious? Crixvan muttered beside me in the observation booth. I'm beginning to think we shouldn't underestimate anything about humans, I replied. Zyloth opened the trial with much less fanfare than the day before. The crowds were still enormous, but the atmosphere had changed. People weren't here to watch humanity get crushed anymore. They were here because they genuinely didn't know what would happen. The scenario is the Battle of Kelvar Ridge, Zyloth announced. A classic tactical problem. Both commanders will start with identical fleets. Victory conditions are complete destruction of enemy forces or capture of the enemy flagship begin. The holographic display materialized. 300 ships per side spread across a simulated star system with 2 planets, an asteroid field and a debris cloud from an ancient space station. Standard engagement range. Admiral Hess immediately began deploying his forces with textbook precision. Cruisers to the flanks, carriers in the rear, destroyers screening forward, battleships in a central strike formation. It was beautiful to watch, like a deadly ballet. Vasquez stood still for approximately 30 seconds, just looking at the display. Then she started writing in her notebook. The Hess launched his opening move, all feint toward the asteroid field while his main force prepared to swing around the debris cloud. It was a classic double envelopment tactic that had won countless battles throughout history. Vasquez sent her entire fleet directly at his center. What is she doing? Mervik gasped. That's suicide. Hess will tear her apart. Except that's not what happened. Vasquez's fleet accelerated to maximum speed, ignoring damage from Hess's screening forces. She lost approximately 40 ships in the initial engagement, but then her remaining vessels punched straight through his formation and split into 3 groups. One group went after Hess's carriers. One group looped back to hit his battleships from behind. The third group, tiny fighters and bombers, scattered into the asteroid field. Hess tried to reform his lines. His superior numbers should have let him overwhelm her easily. All but Vasquez's forces kept moving, never staying in one place long enough for him to bring his full strength to bear. She was sacrificing ships deliberately, using them to tie up larger vessels while her other forces maneuvered. She's not trying to win through superior tactics, I realized suddenly. She's trying to create chaos. And it was working. Hess's carefully organized formation was falling apart. His ships were engaged in dozens of individual battles across the entire system. His numerical advantage meant nothing because he couldn't coordinate them effectively. Then Vasquez's fighters emerged from the asteroid field directly behind Hess's flagship. Impossible, Hess said, his voice carrying through the observation booth. I had sensors monitoring that entire region. Vasquez smiled for the first time. You had sensors monitoring the standard navigation routes through that region. We went through the dangerous parts. Her fighters swarmed the flagship. Hess tried to withdraw, but Vasquez's other forces had positioned themselves perfectly to cut off every escape route. He was trapped. I yield, Hess said quietly. The crowd's reaction was different this time. Less shock, More amazement. Humanity had won again. But this time people had watched it happen step by step. They'd seen Vasquez deliberately embrace chaos and use it as a weapon. The second trial goes to humanity, Zyloth announced. His voice was steady, but I could see the tension in every one of his 4 hands. 2-0. One more trial remained. That evening I received an unexpected message requesting my presence at a private meeting. The location was neutral ground, a diplomatic lounge between the Kryn and human quarters. When I arrived, Ambassador Webb was waiting, 2 glasses of something amber-colored on the table between chairs. Advisor Tal-Merin, Webb said pleasantly.
Thank you for coming. I took the liberty of ordering drinks. That's Kryn fire wine, if I'm not mistaken. This, he gestured to his own glass, is Earth whiskey. I thought we might have a conversation. I sat carefully, all my instincts screaming that this was a trap. What kind of conversation, Ambassador? An honest one. Webb took a sip of his whiskey. You've spent the last 2 days researching humanity. You know our history now. You understand what we are. You're warriors, I said bluntly. Your entire civilization is built on conflict. Not quite, Webb corrected gently. We're survivors. There's a difference. Warriors seek combat. We've simply learned to be very, very good at it because the alternative was extinction. What do you want, Ambassador? Webb leaned forward. Tomorrow is the 3rd trial. Endurance. I'm going to be honest with you because I think you deserve it. Captain Vasquez is going to win. You can't possibly know that. Yes, I can. Webb's expression was serious now, the pleasant mask dropping away. Because we chose her specifically for these trials. She's not just a soldier, Advisor. She's a distance runner. Before she joined the military, she completed something we call ultramarathons, races of 160 kilometers or more. She's run for 36 hours straight without stopping. Your endurance trial is supposed to last how long? 24 hours? My scales went cold. Why are you telling me this? Because what happens after she wins matters more than the trials themselves. Webb finished his whiskey in one swallow.
Emperor Zyloth is going to have a choice.
He can accept humanity into the council as equals, acknowledge that his assumptions about us were wrong, and move forward with dignity. Or he can reject the results, claim the trials were invalid somehow, and make us enemies. You're threatening the Empire? No, Webb said quietly. I'm trying to prevent a war that nobody wants. Your empire is powerful, Advisor, ancient, respected, but it's also rigid. You've spent 9,000 years believing you're superior to everyone else, and that belief has made you weak in ways you don't even recognize. And humanity is different? Humanity knows we're not special. While we've spent our entire history being reminded of our mortality, our limitations, our weaknesses, so we adapted, we innovated, we learned to win fights we had no business surviving. Webb stood, talk to your emperor. Help him understand that losing the trials isn't a defeat for the Empire. It's an opportunity to grow. He left me sitting there, staring at my untouched fire wine, trying to figure out if I'd just been given a warning or a gift. The 3rd trial began at dawn. The challenge was simple in concept, brutal in execution. Both champions would run a course through the wilderness preserve on Kryn Prime's southern continent. 250 kilometers of mountains, forests, rivers, and predators. No supplies except water. No breaks. First to reach the finish line won. Our champion was Vorruk Tal-Merin, an endurance specialist who'd completed this exact course 17 times. His species had evolved on a high-gravity world, giving him natural advantages in stamina and pain tolerance. Captain Vasquez showed up in running shoes, athletic clothing, and a hydration pack. They started together. For the first 50 kilometers, Vorruk maintained a steady lead. His longer legs and greater mass carried him forward efficiently. Vasquez followed approximately 200 meters behind, maintaining a constant pace. By kilometer 100, Vorruk's lead had shrunk to 50 meters. His breathing was labored. Vasquez looked exactly the same as when she'd started. At kilometer 150, they were running side by side. Vorruk kept glancing at her, clearly unsettled by her unwavering pace. She didn't look at him, didn't acknowledge his presence, just kept moving forward with mechanical precision. Kilometer 200, Vorruk stumbled, caught himself, stumbled again. His endurance was legendary, but even legends have limits. Vasquez pulled ahead. By kilometer 225, Saruk had fallen so far behind that the tracking cameras could barely keep both runners in frame simultaneously. Vasquez's pace hadn't changed, hadn't slowed, hadn't varied by more than a few seconds per kilometer for the entire course. She crossed the finish line with Saruk still 15 kilometers back. Then she sat down, drank some water and waited for him to finish because apparently humans have this bizarre concept of sportsmanship even in competition. When Saruk finally staggered across the line and collapsed, Vasquez helped the medical team get him stabilized. She was sweating and tired, certainly, but she looked like she could have run another 100 kilometers if needed. The third trial goes to humanity. Emperor Zyloth announced. They have achieved victory in all 3 challenges. The crowd didn't roar this time. They stood in silence, watching as Captain Vasquez accepted the traditional victor's circlet, a simple band of silver that marked her as champion of the trials. Then, slowly the applause began. Not the mindless cheering from before. This was something different. Respect, acknowledgement, the sound of thousands of beings recognizing that everything they thought they knew had just been proven wrong. But I was watching Emperor Zyloth. His scales had gone completely white, a sign of extreme stress. All 4 hands gripped his throne.
He was faced with exactly the choice Webb had described.
By ancient tradition, Zyloth said slowly, victory in the trials of ascendancy grants the winning species immediate admission to the Galactic Council with full rights and privileges. He paused. The entire arena held its breath. However, Zyloth continued, and my heart sank. There are irregularities that must be addressed. The trials have not been conducted in 400 years. Protocols may have been misunderstood. I am calling for a council review before any final determination is made. The crowd's noise shifted immediately. Confusion, anger. People had watched humanity win fairly, and now the Emperor was trying to invalidate the results. Ambassador Webb stood in the diplomatic section. His expression was carefully neutral, but I could see the calculation behind his eyes. He'd predicted this exact scenario. Your Radiance, Webb's voice cut through the noise. If I might address the council? Zyloth's scales flickered. Speak, Ambassador. Earth accepts your decision to seek council review. We understand that traditions of this importance require careful consideration. Webb's tone was perfectly diplomatic. However, we would like to propose an alternative that might address your concerns more directly. What alternative? A challenge. Not for council membership, but for something more significant. Webb smiled slightly. Emperor Zyloth, we challenge you personally. One final trial. You against Captain Vasquez. Choose any challenge you wish. Combat, strategy, endurance, or something else entirely. If you win, humanity withdraws its application and won't reapply for 100 years. If we win, you accept the original trial results and resign your throne. The arena went absolutely silent. Zyloth stood slowly, all 4 arms spreading. You dare challenge the Emperor directly? You ask me to wager my throne? I'm asking you to prove that your position was earned through merit rather than birth. Webb replied calmly. Isn't that what your empire values? Strength?
Capability. Show us that the Emperor of the Kryn deserves his title.
It was a perfect trap. If Zyloth refused, he looked weak. If he accepted and lost, he lost everything. But if he accepted and won, he'd restore the Empire's honor and solve the human problem permanently. I saw the moment Zyloth made his decision. His scales shifted from white to deep purple, the color of determination. I accept your challenge. Ambassador Webb, hold a trial will be strategy. We will face each other in the Grand Simulation Chamber in 3 days. The entire galaxy will witness whether humanity's tricks can defeat 9,000 years of imperial excellence. Webb bowed. 3 days, Your Radiance. We'll be ready. As the crowd dispersed, I caught up with Crixvan. This is insane, I said. Why would Webb escalate like this? Because he knows something we don't. Crixvan replied grimly. And I think we're about to find out what. The next 3 days were the longest of my life. Zyloth prepared obsessively, whilst running simulation after simulation. He consulted with every military strategist in the Empire. He had his neural implants upgraded to handle even more tactical data streams. He was treating this like the most important battle of his life. Because it was. Meanwhile, Captain Vasquez and Ambassador Webb were spotted having casual meals in public restaurants, taking walks through the gardens, acting like they didn't have a care in the world. The day of the final challenge arrived. The Grand Simulation Chamber was packed beyond capacity. Every major leader in the known galaxies was present. This had transcended sports or competition. This was historical. Their Emperor Zyloth arrived in full ceremonial armor, looking every centimeter the warrior emperor. Captain Vasquez arrived in her usual fatigues. But Ambassador Webb didn't accompany her. Instead, a different human walked beside her. He was older, maybe 60 years by human standards, with gray hair and calm eyes. He wore a simple suit similar to Webb's. "Who is that?" I asked, one of the human attachés. "That's Professor James Lynn," she replied. "Game theory specialist. He advised the Earth Defense Force on strategic doctrine." My stomach dropped. They'd brought a specialist. The rules were simple. Zyloth and Vasquez would each command fleets in an evolving scenario. The simulation would adapt to their decisions, creating new challenges in real time. First commander to achieve decisive victory would win. They took their positions. The holographic display materialized, and then something unexpected happened. "Before we begin," Vasquez said, "I'd like to propose a modification to the rules." Zyloth's eyes narrowed. "What modification?" "Instead of commanding against each other, what if we commanded together? Make it a cooperative challenge. See if we can solve an unsolvable scenario." The crowd murmured in confusion. Zyloth looked genuinely baffled. "That defeats the entire purpose of the challenge," he said. "Does it?" Vasquez asked. "You wanted to prove imperial excellence. I'm offering you a chance to prove something better. That cooperation beats competition. That two civilizations working together can accomplish more than either alone. And if I refuse, then we fight, and one of us loses everything. But if you accept, we both win." Vasquez stepped forward. "Your Radiance, Earth doesn't want your throne. We never did. We want partnership. We want to learn from you, and we want you to learn from us. The trials weren't about proving we're better. They were about proving we're equals." Zyloth stood motionless for a long moment. Every eye in the chamber was fixed on him. Then, slowly he began to laugh. It started as a low rumble and built into a full, genuine laugh that echoed through the chamber. His scales cycled through colors rapidly, settling on a warm gold. "Ambassador Webb was right about you," Zyloth said finally. "You are clever. Infuriatingly, brilliantly clever." He looked at the crowd. "Humanity has taught us a valuable lesson over these trials. They've shown us that strength comes in forms we never considered, that our assumptions were limiting our growth, that 9,000 years of peace made us forget how to adapt." He turned back to Vasquez. "I accept your modification. Let us face this challenge together." They worked for 6 hours straight. The simulation threw increasingly impossible scenarios at them. Enemy fleets that outnumbered them 10 to 1, supply lines that collapsed, allies that betrayed them, natural disasters that destroyed entire planets. But rare gold, diatomators, destroyed entire planets. And they solved every single one. Zyloth's strategic brilliance combined with Vasquez's chaotic adaptability created something neither could have achieved alone. They anticipated each other's moves, covered each other's weaknesses, and ultimately defeated a scenario that had been specifically designed to be unbeatable. When the simulation finally ended in victory, both of them were exhausted. Zyloth's scales had gone pale from mental strain. Vasquez was leaning on the command console for support. The crowd erupted in applause that lasted for 20 minutes. "Humanity is granted immediate admission to the Galactic Council," Zyloth announced when the noise finally died down. "With full rights, full privileges, and our deepest respect. Furthermore, I am establishing a permanent joint task force between the Kryn Empire and Earth. We have much to learn from each other." He extended one of his 4 hands to Vasquez. She took it, and they shook, human style. "Welcome to the galaxy, Captain," Zyloth said. "Thank you, Your Radiance," Vasquez replied. "Though I think you should know something." "What's that?" "We never actually wanted you to resign. Webb just knew you'd never agree to a cooperative challenge unless we forced the issue. The wager was always the point, not the outcome." Zyloth stared at her for a moment, then laughed again. "You manipulated me into proving your point about cooperation. We learned from the best, Your Radiance. 9,000 years of diplomatic history gave us plenty of examples to study. And that, my friends, is how humanity didn't actually steal the Emperor's throne, but instead convinced him to share it. The Kryn Empire is still the most powerful civilization in 7 galaxies. Emperor Zyloth still rules from his throne on Kryn Prime. But now, sitting in an equal chair beside him during council sessions, is Ambassador Marcus Webb of Earth. They argue constantly. They disagree about policy. They drive each other absolutely insane. And together, they've made the Galactic Council stronger than it's been in millennia. As for me, I'm now the liaison between Kryn and Earth militaries. I spend half my time trying to understand human combat doctrine, and the other half trying to explain to Kryn officers that no, humans are not secretly planning to conquer everyone. They're just naturally paranoid because of their history. Captain Vasquez retired from active service and now runs the joint military academy we established. She's teaching our soldiers human martial arts. They're teaching her advanced weapons systems. Everyone's having a wonderful time beating each other up in training exercises. Professor Lin and Admiral Hess have become best friends and co-authored 3 books on tactical theory that are revolutionizing how we think about strategy. And Emperor Zyloth? He visits Earth regularly. He's developed a fondness for something humans call pizza, though watching him eat it with 4 hands simultaneously is genuinely disturbing. The moral of this story, if there is one, is simple. Never underestimate a species that survived everything the universe could throw at them using nothing but stubbornness and creativity, because while they might not have our technology or our long history, they have something equally valuable. They have the absolute refusal to accept that anything is impossible. And in a galaxy that had forgotten how to dream big, that might be the most dangerous weapon of all.